today. Wasn't that nice for February 1st, 2022? We'll be talking tonight about, is the sun shrinking? We've been going through slowly our seminar series, redoing part 7, the questions and answer. You can get the whole series for $50. It's 18 hours. You can get 10 of them for $300 and give it to all your friends. Life-changing. Anyway, we believe the Bible is true. Absolutely true. God made everything in 6 days. He told us that in the 10 Commandments. In 6 days, the Lord made heaven, earth, sea, everything in them. He said, it's a sign between me and the children of Israel. In 6 days, the Lord made heaven and earth. So what about the sun? Oh, yeah. He made the sun and the earth in those 6 days. Actually made the earth first. Yeah. That drives the atheist nuts. Okay. We believe dinosaurs lived with man, and evolution is the dumbest and most dangerous religious cult in the history of the world. It's a mental illness to believe you came from a rock and you're related to a mosquito. You're sick. We're here to help. Doctors in. We're here to help. Okay. Debates this month. John Findlay. Tomorrow night's Whack an Atheist, and then Thursday will be a debate, and then Friday, or next Wednesday, my spiritual birthday. All you atheists want to come on, I'll take you. And then another debate with David Neff, and then a debate with I forgot to put it again. It's been busy around here. Anyway, some more debates in March. John Findlay wrote to the guy scheduling the debate. He said, I'm a former Calvary Chapel pastor of 10 years, and I've recently fallen down the slippery slope of evolution and similar heretical sciencey stuff. Well, Jonathan, evolution is not sciencey. Evolution is imagination, religion. You left the truth to go to an imagination station. We'll talk about that when we have the debate. Okay, then I'm debating David Neff again, and the guy with the weird hat, Wade the Wizard, and then Mark Drysdale. Okay, people ask me all the time in our comment section, when will the first peer-reviewed astronomy paper be issued by your science center? You guys are so hung up on this peer-reviewed. I saw a video, I thought, this is perfect. 1 minute, 45 seconds long. Are you ready? What happened? Nope. There it is. It's thinking.
What is science? People talk glibly about science. What is science? People coming out of a university with a master's degree or a PhD.
It'll take a minute. It's thinking.
Take them into the field, and they literally don't believe anything unless there's a peer-reviewed paper. It's the only thing they accept. And you say to them, but let's observe, let's think, let's discuss. They don't do it. It's just, is it in the peer-reviewed paper or not? That's their view of science. I think it's pathetic. Gone into universities as bright young people, they come out of them brain dead,
Amen.
Not even knowing what science means. They think it means peer-reviewed papers, etc. No, that's academia. And if a paper is peer-reviewed, it means everybody thought the same, therefore they approved it. An unintended consequence is that when new knowledge emerges, new scientific insights, they can never, ever be peer-reviewed. So we're blocking all new advances in science that are big advances. If you look at the breakthroughs in science, almost always they don't come from the center of that profession. They come from the fringe. People see it differently. The finest candle makers in the world couldn't even think of electric lights. They don't come from within, they often come from outside the breaks. We're going to kill ourselves because of stupidity.
That's classic. The brightest candle makers couldn't even think about electric lights. Think about that for a minute. That's awesome. And you guys that are so devoted to your evolution religion, you cannot even think anything outside the box. And you keep asking, where's the peer-reviewed papers to prove creation? This is your whole mentality is screwed up right there, okay? Science deals with what we observe, study, test, and demonstrate, not what is peer-reviewed, okay? You'll never have advancements in science if everything's got to be peer-reviewed, because one new idea could not be peer-reviewed. Think about it for a minute. Anyway, I thought that was good. Okay, we'll be covering miscellaneous questions in our, who knows how long this is going to take, probably a couple of 100 years. Things that we covered in Q&A, adding more detail. Okay, tonight we're on the question, is the sun shrinking? Slide number 747, enter. Is the sun shrinking? Well, I think it's pretty obvious the sun is burning. How many have seen that happen before? You've been outside? Okay. The sun is burning, and it's burning 5 million tons of its nuclear hydrogen every second. Okay, now wait a minute. If the sun is burning 5 million tons a second, that's what it's losing to space. Okay, it's actually burning more hydrogen, turning it to helium. That's a long story. But the sun is losing 5 million tons of matter every second. Would you agree that would be quite a weight loss program? 5 million tons a second the sun is losing in its mass. Now, think with me for a minute, okay? How much fuel does the sun burn a day? 600 million tons per second produce 598 million tons per second of helium. The rest is converted to energy. The sun consumes 5 times 10 to the 13th tons of hydrogen in one day. The sun burns 50, let's say, million, billion, trillion tons of fuel every day. A cubic mile of water weighs about 4.6 billion tons. Lake Michigan has 1,180 cubic miles of water, so the sun would burn up all the Lake Michigan fuel, if it was full of fuel, about 9 times every day. Now stop and think. The sun is burning. The sun would burn a fuel supply equal to the entire Earth about every million days. The whole Earth. Okay. Will the sun run out of fuel? The sun has enough hydrogen fuel to last another 5 billion years. However, life on Earth might become extinct as early as 1 billion years. Oh, okay. Roughly 5 billion years from now, the sun will exhaust the hydrogen fuel in its core and start burning helium, forcing it to transition to a red giant star. During the shift, the atmosphere will expand out to somewhere around 1 astronomical unit. Now, wait. That's how far we are from the Earth. That's how they measure an astronomical unit, Earth to sun. So the sun will expand out to the size of our orbit going around it. That'll be a problem. Increasing the sun's mass, if you go back in time and add 5 million tons a second. Go back in time, which of course we can't do, but just imagine. Go back in time, adding 5 million tons a second. Wouldn't that slowly upset the gravitational balance between the sun and the planets? Because the gravity of the sun is pulling them in while centrifugal force is throwing them out, and they're balanced to keep us just the right distance. What if we were further out like Mars? We'd all freeze. What if we were closer like Venus? We'd all boil. The gravitational balance is really critical between the sun and the Earth. So if the sun is losing mass, that's going to create a problem. Since 1836, more than 100 different observers at the Royal Greenwich Observatory and U.S. Naval Observatory made direct visual measurements that suggest the sun's diameter is shrinking at the rate of about 1% a century, or 5 feet per hour. Now, the sun oscillates, it expands and contracts and expands and contracts, but overall, it's generally toward contracting, 5 feet an hour. Okay. Several indirect techniques also confirm the sun is shrinking, although these inferred collapse are only about 1/7 as much. So if this is correct, the sun would have been touching the Earth about 158 million years ago. Now hold it. They're telling me it's 4.5 billion years old. I think we got a problem here. This is the data from the 1840s about the sun's diameter, horizontal and vertical. Either way you look at it, it is shrinking. The sun is burning. Way before that, the sun would have absorbed Mercury and Venus because their orbits are inside ours. Mercury, what, 0.39, and Venus 0.7 or something like that, astronomical unit. Who cares? Once all the helium disappears, the forces of gravity will take over. The sun will shrink into a white dwarf. Downloaded today, written a couple days ago, space.com. The outer material will dissipate, leaving behind a planetary nebula. Astronomers estimate the sun has 7 or 8 billion years left before it sputters and dies. Somebody named Amara Graps, I don't know who this man or woman, there have been claims over the years that the sun is contracting slowly over time. Here we examine that claim. Let us assume that the sun is shrinking by gravity. Stop right there. No, Amara. The sun is obviously going to shrink because it's burning up its fuel source. Now, gravity does seem to play into this, creating the heat and energy for the inner core to burn, but the burning up the fuel source and losing the mass is what's important. It's losing the gravitational pull. There's a delicate balance between the pull of the planets toward the sun and the centrifugal force throwing them out. Those who believe the solar system is billions of years old can only imagine that all the planets adjusted their speed to stay in orbit. as the sun lost 5 million tons a second. That's not a proven scientific fact. That's a theory. We agree the sun's gravity pulls the earth in and centrifugal force throws it out and keeps it nice and balanced. If it were further out, be too cold, further in, be too hot, it's a problem. Okay. So there have been gaps, there have been claims the sun was contracting over time. Here we examine the claim. Let us assume the sun is shrinking by gravity. Read the last line here. Observations don't show the sun to be shrinking by gravitational contraction. How would you tell if it's shrinking by gravitational contraction or just simply by burning up its fuel? Does the sun get smaller every day? The sun is 99.8% of the solar system's mass, but gets lighter every day. Whether it's shrinking or not, it's getting lighter. Think about it now. When enough time goes by, its change will render Earth inhabitable. I agree. Is the sun shrinking? Article published in 1980 and then redone here. What's the date on this one? 1990. Conclusion, the change in the size of the sun over the last 400 years is important to the study of origins. Over 100,000 years, these changes would have accumulated so much that life of any kind on Earth would have been very difficult, if not impossible. Thus, all life on Earth must be less than 100,000 years old. The sun, 20 million years ago, would have been so large it would have engulfed the Earth. You can read the article for yourself. The young, faint sun paradox. According to the theory, it's by Danny Faulkner, the sun derives energy from the thermonuclear conversion of hydrogen to helium deep inside the core. Of course, we can't see that. They see neutrinos escaping that probably indicate that is the truth, but I don't know that that's been, proven beyond reasonable doubt. Anyway, there's convincing evidence the sun is getting at least half of its energy by this method. A thermonuclear source could power the sun for nearly 10 billion years. Most scientists think that the sun, along with the solar system, is 4.6 billion years old, which means it would have exhausted about half of its life. Over the sun's lifetime, the thermonuclear reactions would, according to the theory, gradually change the composition of the core and alter the sun's overall physical structure. Because of this process, the sun would gradually go brighter with age. If the sun was indeed 4.6 billion years old, it should have brightened nearly 40% over this time. Evolutionists maintain life appeared on Earth 3.8 billion years ago. Since then, the sun would have brightened about 25%. So with the current hand-wringing over global warming, one would expect that such a large difference in solar output would greatly increase Earth's temperature over billions of years if the sun's getting brighter. You can read all these articles. I'll let you leave it up here long enough, you can read it. The problem of how the sun could have increased in brightness while the Earth maintained a constant temperature is called the early faint sun paradox. How did this happen? Let's see. From Wikipedia. The faint young sun paradox, or faint young sun problem, describes the apparent contradiction between observations of liquid water early in Earth's history and the atmospheric astrophysical expectation that the sun output would only be 70% as intense. So if the sun's output's only 70% as intense, how do you have liquid water? Everything would be frozen. The issue was raised by astronomer Carl Sagan and George Muller in 1972. Proposed resolutions of the paradox have taken into account greenhouse effects, change to planetary albedo, that's how bright it is, the color, astrophysical influences, or combinations of these suggestions. An unresolved question is how a climate suitable for life was maintained on Earth over the long time scale. This is the whole problem. They won't give up on the idea that the Earth is billions of years old. So all the other problems that come up, they have to say, well, we don't know, we'll put that on the shelf, we'll figure it out later. There's what's called the faint young sun paradox. How could this be? The faint young sun paradox, just Google it. Even though the sun was 30% dimmer than it is now, temperature on Earth has been more or less stable. See the chart at the bottom, billions of years ago? How are they determining the age of these things they're testing? By the geologic column, which doesn't exist anywhere. There's no such thing as a Jurassic period. They tell the kids the top layer is younger. Well, where did it come from? Outer space? Think about it. All the layers are the same age. Whether it's 6,000 or 6 trillion, they're all the same age. Anyway, the time before present, time after formation of the sun. Evolution of the early Earth's mean surface temperature using energy input from both insolation and tidal heat flux is a problem. The faint young sun paradox. You can re-Google it. It's a big problem. A simple calculation can be made assuming that over time there's been no change in Earth's reflectivity. If you got bigger ice caps, it reflects the heat back. That makes another problem because white reflects the heat. Oh, so in the wintertime you want to keep warm, wear dark clothing, absorb the heat. Summertime you want to keep cool, wear light clothing, reflect the sun. Okay, well, the approach is almost certainly unrealistic. It's useful to illustrate the problem. With these assumptions, we find a 25% increase in solar luminosity increases the average temperature of the Earth by about 18 degrees centigrade. That'd be about 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. Since the current average temperature of the Earth is 15 degrees centigrade, the average temperature of the Earth 3.8 billion years ago would have been -3, would have been freezing. Thus, when life supposedly was just beginning, much of the Earth would have been frozen. You can read the whole article for yourself. I'll give you the reference in a minute. How did Earth's atmosphere manage to evolve in such a delicate fashion? One possibility is that it just happened that way. Geologic and biological processes removed greenhouse gases at exactly the same rate to compensate for the increased solar luminosity. That's, I suppose, a possibility. Another option is it ain't that old. That's not a problem for us. Earth's biosphere behaves like a giant single organism. That's what started the Gaia hypothesis. The whole idea that, oh yeah, the Earth itself is a giant living organism. Capital D, dumb on that one, okay? Of course, another logical possibility is the solar system is only thousands of years old. Would you guys even consider that? In this case, there's no paradox to explain because the sun has not been around long enough to increase the luminosity. Many have objected that we know the sun is 4.6 billion years old, but that's not true. There is no direct way of measuring the age of the sun. Our understanding of the sun's structure does not permit a precise calculation of how bright a zero-age sun would be compared with a 4.6 billion-year-old sun. All we can conclude is that the older sun should be brighter than the younger sun. The 4.6 billion-year age comes from the alleged age of meteorites. Of course, creationists reject the billion-year age for meteorites as well. The early faint sun paradox is evidence that the sun, and therefore solar system, is young. It's consistent with the 6,000-year age of the solar system as recorded by biblical chronology. References. Carl Sagan got involved in this, the faint early sun paradox. Okay, you can read all that. If the Earth had been mostly covered with ice year-round, its average temperature would have been cooler. Increased ice cover would increase the reflectivity of the Earth, reducing the heat absorbed by the sun. The Ord model of a single post-flood ice age caused by warm oceans and volcanic dust does not have this problem. How do evolutionists resolve the early faint sun paradox? Most assume the early atmosphere of the Earth had more greenhouse gas. Oh, that'll solve it. In other words, as the sun evolved, the Earth's atmosphere also evolved to cancel out the effect. So let's just imagine, boys and girls, it just happened. We're here, must have happened. That's what they do. It's a very delicate balancing act. Any prolonged deviation from ideal condition would have led to catastrophic heating or cooling. Planetary scientists think that while Earth and Venus are similar, Venus' closer proximity to the sun gave that planet an initial temperature higher than that of the Earth and led to runaway greenhouse effect. As a result, Venus has the hottest surface temperature in the solar system. There's abundant evidence that early in the history, liquid water once flowed on its surface, indicating that Mars was much warmer. Most researchers say this happened about 3.8 billion years ago. However, at that time, the sun would have been 25% fainter. Therefore, the early faint sun paradox provides a very different problem for Mars. Why was that planet much warmer when the sun was at its faintest? Interesting article, you can read all that. So, is the sun shrinking? Yes, the sun is both shrinking and losing mass. Neither of these facts present any problem for biblical account of creation that God made everything in 6 days, but they create big problems, or could create big problems for those who believe the Earth is billions of years old. So I rest my case. I think whether the sun is shrinking or not, I think is good evidence it is, but it's certainly losing mass. Going to make a gravitational problem. You're going to balance that for billions of years. Good luck, guys. All right, any questions or comments? Okay, how many ice ages has the Earth had? I don't think there's any way to know. I got a globe here somewhere. Here we go. We know that there was ice. When it pushes out, it bulldozes rocks in front of it, and then when the ice melts back, the rocks stay there. That's called a terminal moraine, where it terminates. And there are terminal moraines all the way down to Kansas City, Missouri. So I think most folks would agree the ice polar ice caps came all the way down to Kansas City, at least. And then they melted back. I think probably the ice age was triggered by the beginning of the flood, by the ice canopy collapsing, being shattered, and dumping on the poles by magnetic effect. And so I cover all that on video number 6. So I tend to think one ice age, but with the earth flooded, earth covered in water, some frozen, some liquid. During Noah's flood, I think that's when the ice age was happening, and probably lasted 300 or 400 years after that. How long would it take to melt the ice from Kansas City back to the North Pole? Long time. It becomes its own refrigerator at some point. It just keeps itself cold. So I think it probably would advance and retract maybe every summer, retreat, and in the winter advance. So I would vote. I wouldn't know for sure, but I would vote for one ice age with swelling and shrinking and swelling and shrinking, gradually shrinking to the current size it is today. Okay. Apart from the Bible, can you provide scientific evidence the sun was created after the earth? No, sir. Cannot. Can you provide evidence it was created before the earth? I think I trust the book. God said he did it. He told us how he did it. I believe him. I've chosen to believe it. But I'm not asking for my religion to be taught at taxpayer expense. You guys who believe in evolution are demanding that we all pay for your religion to be taught. I think you should go start a private school to teach those who want to learn evolution and get it out of the public school. Okay. Could you share your data set for how 8 people could have repopulated the world in 4,400 years? If you look at the data from Genesis chapter 9, after the flood, Noah's sons, Shem, we assume Ham and Japheth, their dates aren't given, but Shem lived to be 600 years old. How many kids could you have in 600 years? Let's see, one every 9 months and 20 minutes divided into 60. You could have a lot of kids, right? So let's just wildly pick a number and say Shem and Ham and Japheth each had 100 kids per family. Then the next generation lived to be 438, and then 433, and then 464. So these first 4 or 5 generations after the flood, and even after that, they lived to be 200 for several generations, according to the Bible, Genesis chapter 11. So I think the population would have exploded. For one, you got the whole world to take over, no limitation on resources, plenty of land. You want a couple million acres? Go take it. One kid says, I want America. Okay, you can have it. I mean, there's no competition for food or resources at all, which is one of the limiting factors for population today. So I think it's a lot easier for me to believe that 8 people over a period of 4,400 years created the current population than it is for me to believe that all the population came from a rock. That's hard to believe. Okay? Yes, sir. What's your opinion of the book of Enoch? Found after the Bible was translated as scripture. There are actually 3 books of Enoch. Are they in here, Steve, or still in the library? You seen them? It's a yellow book. Book of Enoch. Is it in there? Okay. Anyway, I think they're interesting reading. I don't think they're scripture. I think it's a extra biblical book. It does not belong in the Bible. Just because somebody wrote a book doesn't mean it belongs in the Bible. It's not inspired. Interesting history. Okay. Is Joshua 10:12-4 a literal event or language of passage more poetic? Dinosaur Adventureland. Joshua 10:12-14. I have to look that up real quick. I don't know the Bible by heart. I've read it all, but let's see. Joshua 10:12. Okay. Oh, about the sun holding still. Yeah, I know that passage. Joshua. The Bible says Joshua prayed for the sun to stand still. Of course, we would understand that as the earth had to stop turning. You got to understand, this is written from the observer's perspective. What he would see is the sun standing still. Somebody off the planet would see the earth had to stop spinning. Well, nobody's off the planet looking at it. So if everybody on the planet, it's perfectly fine to say sunrise tomorrow at 6:15 or whatever. Is the sun rising? Well, technically, no. The earth is turning under the sun. So it looks like to us it's rising, but I think we're the only observer. So that's very logical to give all the accounts from the earth-based perspective. So not a problem there. Okay? Any other questions? That's it. Thank you so much for joining us. Tomorrow night, Whack an Atheist. Send in names of those you would like to see whacked. We've got a long list already, but maybe some need to be moved up to the top of the list. couple of them just are asking for a whacking. I love it. And then a couple debates coming up soon. See you